Good day, ladies and gentlemen.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Today, on April 13th, we commemorate the victims of the Katynia massacre, thousands of Polish officers and Polish elites who were brutally murdered in the forest near Smoleńsk and other sites in the occupied by Soviet Union East European territories. Canada, for the last several years, commemorates the victims of this genocide by calling each April 13th the Katynia Memorial Day. Today, we also commemorate the 3rd anniversary of the Polish government plane crash in Smoleńsk, Russia, the most tragic event in the history of Poland after the Second World War. Poland lost its leadership and chiefs of armies of all types, all high-ranked generals of NATO.
On the 10th of April 2010, Poland lost 96 prominent leaders, with the president, Professor Lech Kaczyński, his wife, and the First Lady of Poland, Maria Kaczyńska, last Polish president in exile, Ryszard Kaczorowski, members of the parliament, top government officials, president of the Central Bank of Poland, members of the clergy, Anna Walentynowicz, the true leader of the Solidarity movement, and the representatives of the families of victims of 1940 Katynia forest genocide.
Le 10 avril 2010, la Pologne a perdu ses dirigeants, 96 leaders, avec le président professeur Lech Kaczyński, sa femme Maria, le dernier président en exil.
We have gathered here today to honor all who died in the crash and express our solidarity with the families of the victims who are demanding the truth for 3 years about the strategy and whose calls are ignored by the authorities in Moscow and in Warsaw. The Polish people are all supported by the scientists and people like all of us, people around the world for whom the truth and freedom are the fundamental values.
Nous sommes venus ici afin de rendre hommage à ceux qui ont perdu leur vie dans cette catastrophe et afin de souligner notre solidarité avec les familles de victimes qui demandent la vérité concernant cette tragédie.
Szablą odbierzemy marsz nasz Dąbrowski, z ziemi włoskiej do Polski, za Twoim przewodem złączył się z narodem.
We would like to welcome our friends and supporters, His Excellency Ambassador of the Czech Republic, Karel Żebrakowski, His Excellency Ambassador of Croatia, Mr. Veselko Grubisic.
Accueillons Monsieur Andris Kesteris, président de la Fédération Baltique du Canada.
We also welcome representatives of the Canadian, Hungarian, Lithuanian, Estonian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian communities and organizations who have joined us today as a sign of solidarity and support for this just cause. We also welcome representatives of many Polish-Canadian organizations, such as Polish National Union in Canada, Canadian Polish Congress, the Polish Institute of Arts and Science in Canada, Association of Polish Engineers in Canada, and the growing in popularity Club of Gazeta Polska in Ottawa. I would like to welcome all of Polish Canadians, as well as fellow Canadians,
qui venaient vous joindre à nous, démontrant votre solidarité et appui aux célébrations de Katynia 1940, Smoleńsk 2010.
We want to commemorate General Andrzej Błasik, the pro-NATO Polish patriot who worked tirelessly to develop Polish military aviation. He was broadly recognized and valued among the NATO leadership.
Mrs. Ewa Błasik, the wife of the fallen General Andrzej Błasik, is the honorary patron of our event. Mrs. Ewa Błasik has bravely and relentlessly defended the honor of her husband, Polish soldiers, and NATO officers' uniform. She has stood up against malicious defamations perpetrated by the Polish and Russian investigative teams and the subservient media.
Why would Russians choose to single out General Blasik and tarnish his authority and dignity to serve their political interests? The answer to that question has been provided by Antoni Macierewicz, the chairman of the parliamentary committee.
General Blasik represents a will of the nation to have the independent army forces. General Blasik represents an ideal towards which every soldier must aspire, and he was attacked in regard to that ideal. Attacks against him were in fact aimed at destroying Polish army and Polish aspirations for independency.
We will read the message sent to us by Mrs. Ewa Błasik. The message will be read by Dorota Lipin.
I remember meeting foreign commanders and their kind words about Andrzej. These talks are a consolation in the days of perpetual grieving. They have raised me up right after this unimaginable tragedy, moments after funerals of our loved ones. A campaign of hatred and lies started, and the lies were being told all over the world. Lies about the alleged responsibility of our pilots for the crash, lies about the pressure from the president, about the guilt of the commander of the Polish Air Force. Unfortunately, the current Polish president and the Polish government never reacted to these calumnies, dishonoring the officer of the Republic of Poland and the officer of North American Treaty Organization. Slowly, the truth is coming out through the shells of the Smoleńsk lies. I thank you for craving the truth and for seeking this truth. I thank you for helping the world recognize the honor and the reputation of the Polish soldiers. Polish soldiers recognized for their heroism, bravery, and military talents. I ask you, more so as it is in Canada, where International Civil Aviation Organization is headquartered, talk to them. Demand international investigation.
Jolanta Szaniawska.
Matko Boska, Królowo Korony Polskiej, miej nas w opiece w imię Ojca i Syna i Ducha Świętego. Droga Polonio, kochani rodacy, mija właśnie 3. rocznica tragicznego lotu do Smoleńska. Zginął w nim prezydent Rzeczypospolitej Świętej Pamięci profesor Lech Kaczyński wraz z małżonką. Zginęli ministrowie, szefowie najważniejszych urzędów w Polsce. Zginęli parlamentarzyści, posłowie i senatorowie wszystkich opcji politycznych, od prawicy po lewicę. Zginęli duchowni, kombatanci, działacze społeczni, rodziny zamordowanych oficerów w Katyniu, oficerowie Biura Ochrony Rządu oraz załoga rządowego samolotu Tupolew 154 Military. Zginął również kwiat niepodległego Wojska Polskiego, generałowie, najwyżsi dowódcy wszystkich rodzajów sił zbrojnych naszej ojczyzny. Przede wszystkim pragnę podziękować Wam, droga Polonio Kanadyjska. Dziękuję Wam. Dziękuję w imieniu żon i rodzin, wszystkich ludzi munduru, poległych w smoleńskiej katastrofie. Pamiętajcie o tym i głoście tę prawdę kanadyjskim władzom.
The support came also from the two leading in Canada conservative and New Democratic parties.
Honorable Thomas Mulcair, leader of the official opposition party, New Democratic Party of Canada.
That by continuing to honor the fallen, we can learn from the past and prevent tragedies like this one from ever happening again.
Honorable Jason Kenney, Minister of Citizenship, Immigration and Multiculturalism, in remembrance of the victims of Katynia and the Smoleńsk presidential plane crash.
The tragedy of this plane crash was deepened by the fact that the victims were on their way to commemoration ceremonies for the 1940 Katynia massacre.
Mr. Andris Kesteris.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of the Latvian National Federation in Canada and the Baltic Federation in Canada, which includes Estonians, Latvians, and Lithuanians in our community. We're here not just in sympathy with you and our Polish friends, but we're here in solidarity. We also know the crimes and the tragedies that have taken place, you could say, since before World War II. The events that we are commemorating here today, whether it's Katynia or Smoleńska, those are just, like I said, a long list of crimes against humanity, unfortunately. I have to salute you all, because during the 1970s and 80s, we all came together in a committee in Canada, which was the Committee of the Captive Nations. And we were all very active during those times, right here on the steps of Parliament. Now we continue from the Captive Nations group to a new organization, which is the Central and Eastern European Council in Canada. It is unfortunate that these efforts are still necessary, and we're not just looking for truth, we're looking for justice. I looked at your photo here of a soldier, the statue of the soldier being killed. I was thinking, it's a symbol of betrayal. It's not a betrayal just of political or military in those events, but actually it's a betrayal of humanity. We are with you. Continue the fight. Thank you.
Mr. Louis Kovacs.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear Polish friends, greetings from Hungarians in Ottawa. I have entitled this Shared Suffering Have Become Mutual Friendship. Stefan Báthory, Prince of Transylvania, this centuries-old Hungarian land. Prince Báthory became King of Poland. One of our common heroes, József Bem, was one of the top generals of the 1848 Hungarian Freedom Revolution, and earlier on, a Polish freedom fighter against the Russian Tsar. Our freedom is your freedom. Your suffering is our suffering. Both our countries greatly suffered from German, followed by Soviet invasion, occupation, and untold misery and inhumanity. By the end of the Second World War, though, several 100,000 Poles found refuge in Hungary, including 10,000 of Jews who were saved simply by being registered as Catholics. The Smoleńska tragedy 3 years ago painfully reopened the Katynia wounds, especially with the ensuing controversy surrounding the clouded circumstances of the plane crash. Here again, Hungarians share their Polish friends' grief, as demonstrated by an official commemoration in Budapest 3 days ago on the anniversary of the Smoleńska tragedy. And so our mutual friendship lives on. A whole train of Polish citizens, for example, came to Budapest for last month's celebration of March 15th National Day. 1.5 million Hungarians left in Transylvania, and the Romanian majority there wants to deny their rights to self-determination and autonomy. This is the secular flag of Transylvania that even today get punished, they get fined simply for using their own symbols. Let's prevent another genocide, that is the slow elimination of a minority that is fighting for its survival. Spokoj, peace, solidarność, solidarity forever, podziękowanie. Thank you. Do widzenia.
Do widzenia. Thank you. We have also received a message from Eugene Potet, the president of the Association for Intelligence Officers, a retired senior CIA scientific intelligence officer who has more than 50 years of experience in aviation and military technology. So this is from a CIA expert.
Dear Solidarity 2010 Ottawa. Thank you for your kind invitation to join you on such an important and public memorial. I would urge you and your compatriots to also contact the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is based in Montreal, to conduct an objective, non-Russian investigation of the Smoleńsk crash as a logical and necessary follow-on to your memorial event.
Our Prime Minister Stephen Harper said during the commemoration mass in April 2010, Poland lost its leader, President Lech Kaczyński, a man who stood proudly and defiantly for Polish freedom, democracy and independence, even through the most difficult times.
The Second World War started on September 1st, 1939, when Nazi Germany, under Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland. The Soviet Red Army attacked Poland from the east on September 17, 1939. Due to this jointly orchestrated attack, Poland was split in half between the two totalitarian regimes. When Hitler murdered 61,000 Polish leaders, Stalin made the decision on March 5, 1940, to execute by shooting 25,700 of the Polish elite and lead to peril hundreds of thousands of Poles in occupied Poland.
Katynia Forest is just one of the many sites where Polish officers were murdered with a shot in the back of the head and buried in the deep ditches that became the mass graves. In the Piatyciaki forest, which contained about 13,000 bodies, were destroyed by grinding of the bones with heavy equipment.
According to documents, about 3,400 Polish leaders were murdered by the Ukrainian Soviet police in Bykownia near Kiev, which Minister Jason Kenney has recently visited. It is believed that about 4,500 Polish prisoners were victims of the Belarusian cut-in list and were murdered in the prison of NKVD in Minsk and buried in Kuropaty in Belarus, on the outskirts of Minsk.
Not only did Soviets murder Polish prisoners of war, which is of course against law, they also deported their families. They were tracing their families by the letters that those soldiers were allowed to send to their families. Around 2 million Polish citizens were deported either to Kazakhstan or Siberia, and most of them died, of course, from cold famine. You know, they sent them without men. They sent widows already by that time and their children to perish.
It was not until the Smoleńsk crash on April 10, 2010, that the world had to turn its attention once again to Katynia.
President Lech Kaczyński died in the crash with the entire delegation only 20 kilometers from the Katynia forest. The Polish governmental plane exploded just above the tree line near the Smoleńsk airport. The plane was shattered into small pieces by two explosions above the ground.
Officials in Moscow and collaborators in Warsaw presented the false hypothesis from day one, accusing innocent pilots and General Błasik of wrongdoing, which has proven as a lie by the Polish military prosecutors in Warsaw. Initial autopsies of the bodies of the victims were conducted only in Moscow, and the related Russian documentation provided the false information on victims' bodies. Moreover, several bodies were swapped in their coffins, which led to recently done second wave of burials.
I will send you to the www.smoleńskcrash.eu for more information, and also other websites like TV Niezależna Polonia, for example. This is a good television where interviews with scientists are published, also poloniatube.ca. Explosive materials found in the wreck on the plane on 30 seats, 100 G acceleration force inside of the plane at time of explosion was present. This is even in the official reports. And of course, such an acceleration force is only possible because of a higher energy. Victims' bodies, autopsies, confirmed unusual lung injuries, like in a case of an explosion. I will just refer to you to Professor Michael Baden for those lung injuries.
Mr. Samuiło will play the signal.
Cześć i chwała ofiarom smoleńskim i ofiarom zbrodni ludobójstwa katyńskiego.
Wieczny odpoczynek racz im dać, Panie. What I'd like to do right now is just also thank the Russian citizens of the Smolensk Oblast. When widows of the fallen ones visited the crash site, they asked the company, a local company of Russians, to build a big cross. When those Russian citizens heard the intent, what is this cross for, they denied taking any money, so they've done it for free. Other Smolensk citizens, they were weeping along with those victims' families at the crash site. The poem of Alek Rybczyński entitled President Lech Kaczyński Enters Heaven, the poet from Toronto will himself recite in Polish.
Prezydent Lech Kaczyński wkracza do nieba. Doborowym dowodził oddziałem i wszyscy idą wyprostowani. Niebieską aleją, jakby manewr, odchodzimy, powiódł się i nie było wybuchu, który miał zmienić ciało Polski w proch, a ich rozszarpać na kawałki. Tak chciano ich ośmieszyć, z każdej nitki ich mundurów snuć odwieczną szatę zdrady. A oni wkraczają teraz do nieba. Dwaj prezydenci, generał Błasik, Anna Solidarność, Janusz Kopyka, kapitan Protasiuk, admirał Karweta i pozostali zrównani w szarży bohaterstwem śmierci i śpiewają im aniołowie. Tak piękni i młodzi jak stewardesy, które wytrwały przy nich do końca.
Mesdames et messieurs, maintenant prière pour eux de Leszek Długosz, qui lira Madame Dorota Lipien.
In Memoriam by Leszek Długosz. Grant us strength, O Lord. Help us believe that in a split second, messenger of thy hope raised them, sheltered before they crushed. They are saved. Do you believe? You know that I believe.
Mr. Marek Jastrzębski.
Katynia. Ciśnie się do światła, niby warstwy skóry, tłok patrzących twarzy, z podruszonej darni, zgniłe zdjęcia pamiątki, mapy miast i wsi, ale nie ma broni, to nie pole bitwy. O pewnym brzasku w katyńskim lasku strzelali do nas Sowieci. Nie miejcie żalu do Stalina, nie on się za tym wszystkim krył. Przecież to nie jest jego wina, że Roosevelt w Jałcie nie miał sił. Gdyby się triumvirat wspólnie brał za świat tak historyczne kształty, wiadomo kto Cezara grał. I tak rozumieć trzeba Jałtę.
Dear friends, we thank you for your support today in joining the victim families and the Polish people around the world in their call for an impartial international investigation into the Smoleńsk crash. The two official reports, Russian and Polish government report, in our scripts are full of errors.
W imieniu wszystkich wdów, w imieniu ich dzieci, w imieniu wszystkim, którym w Polsce zależy na prawdzie i tutaj wszędzie w całym świecie, dziękuję Wam bardzo serdecznie za to, że tutaj przyszliście.
My name is Louis Kovacs. I'm one member of the Ottawa Hungarian community. I was born in Transylvania in Kolozsvár. Last March 10th, there was a 30,000 demonstration in Marosvásárhely in Transylvania, where they cried out for their autonomy under the Romanian rule. Under Ceausescu, there were almost 3 million. Now there are less than 1.5 million. So we have to do something. Well, first of all, it was Liliana who invited me, and the other thing is that I feel very much a kinship with Polish people, knowing all the tragedy they have suffered, and also knowing the historical ties that we have our two countries.
Thank you very much for your attendance.
You're very welcome.
For Polish Niezależna Polonia, which is the Polish-based community, Ottawa Internet TV, can you introduce yourself to the viewers?
Okay, I'm Andris Kesteris, President of the Latvian National Federation in Canada and the Baltic Federation in Canada.
What made you to come and support us?
Well, I think support is the main word. We all understand why history has to be reflected correctly for the Polish people and for all of Eastern Europe, really, because not enough people are aware of the history of Eastern Europe. Even though most of us are here in our communities, we have to inform the Canadian public more about the events of the last, well, of that century. It was a terrible century to go through, especially for the peoples of Eastern Europe.
It is still some part of that injustice continues.
Yeah. As I mentioned in my speech, it's unfortunate that our demonstrations on the steps of Parliament here in Canada have to continue. In the 70s and 80s, we were talking about freedom for Eastern Europe, which technically has happened, but still the injustices have continued. I'm an archivist, historian. I know the problem of trying to get the truth out of archives from reluctant nations and powers.
Thank you very much for your attendance and support.
Thank you very much.
Jesteś jednym ze współorganizatorów dzisiejszego protestu pod parlamentem. Może przedstawi się widzom telewizji Niezależna Polonia.
Oczywiście. Dzień dobry wszystkim telewidzom TV Niezależna Polonia. Nazywam się Krzysztof Grabkowski. Jestem tylko jednym ze współorganizatorów. Tutaj bardzo wiele osób pracowało, o wiele więcej niż ja. Jest pani Jola, jest pan Wacek, pan Henryk, wiele innych osób. Oczywiście samą uroczystość przygotowywała pani Lila, jej mąż Leszek. Wspaniali ludzie, którzy bardzo wiele godzin poświęcili dla zorganizowania tego wydarzenia.
Organizujecie to już po raz drugi. Pierwszy protest był organizowany przez nas, wspólnie właściwie. Dlaczego to robicie?
Dlatego, że jak komuś się chce zamknąć usta, to kamienie wtedy zaczynają wołać. I jesteśmy tak jak te kamienie, zaczynamy po prostu wołać o to, aby prawda jeszcze coraz bardziej ujrzała światło dzienne. My znamy tą prawdę, tak jak pan Kesteris powiedział dzisiaj na spotkaniu. Łotysz, który podkreślił to, że znamy prawdę, ale oczywiście trzeba ją popularyzować.
Zginęła elita polskiej armii, tak, w bardzo niewyjaśnionych, nazwijmy to, okolicznościach.
Zginęło, tak jak wspominałem, 7 aktywnych generałów NATO, generałów z polskim mundurem najwyższych stopni. W Katyniu zginęło 12 generałów łącznie i to nie tych najwyższych rangą w armii polskiej. Natomiast tutaj zginęli najwyżsi rangą oficerowie, czyli najwyżsi generałowie w naszym Wojsku Polskim.
Czy możesz na zakończenie coś powiedzieć na temat telewizji Niezależna Polonia?
Korzystam ze wszystkich materiałów rzetelnych i na telewizji Niezależna Polonia są bardzo ciekawe wywiady, czyli autentyczne wywiady z ludźmi, którzy podpisują się pod tym, co mówią. Bo jeżeli ktoś jest po prostu nagrany na żywo, to znaczy, że się pod tym podpisuje. I wiadomo, przedruki, coś na internecie mogą być czasami fałszywe, ktoś się tego może potem po prostu wypierać. A tutaj są to rzetelne, bardzo ciekawe wywiady z ekspertami, które miałem przyjemność z zaciekawieniem wysłuchać, przygotowując się nawet tutaj do tej prelekcji dzisiaj. Wywiady też z różnymi innymi osobami bardzo ciekawymi ze świata polonijnego.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Dziękuję.